Welcome to the Hembury Books Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Muddett, and I'm the founder and publisher of Hembury Books. Today, our guest is Jacinta Tynan, who is a journalist, former news presenter, columnist, author, MC, and mother to two teenage boys. Jacinta has published 5 books. Her most recent, The Single Mother's Social Club, is inspiration and advice on embracing single parenthood. She has been a regular columnist with Sunday Life and Body+Soul and contributes to various publications, including Stella. After leaving her successful career as a national TV news anchor, she founded the Spiritual Book Club, sharing inspirational books and author interviews, including the likes of Gabby Bernstein, Deepak Chopra, and Rebecca Campbell. Passionate about social causes, Jacinta is an ambassador for the Warrior Woman Foundation and Raise Foundation, providing in-school mentoring to high school kids across the country. Jacinta, thanks so much for coming on the Hembury Books Podcast.
It's so great to be here. Thanks, Jessica.
The first time I came across you, I'd lived overseas for 10 years and then came back and then became a single parent, and I was a member of the Inner West Inner West Single Mums Facebook group. And someone was like, "Oh, look at this book. It sounds amazing." And we're all like super excited. And I was like, "Who is this person?" And so that was a few years ago. So it's really cool to meet you. I was wondering, you had an amazing career as a TV presenter at Sky News, a journalist and author, and then you founded the Spiritual Book Club. Why did you make that decision?
I have always loved spiritual books. So I've read more of those than any other book, and I've always been I've always had one under my arm, and you know, I've been the go-to person. Friends will say, they'll come and say, "I'm going through this. What book should I read?" And I always know exactly the one. So it was almost like inevitably I was going to do something with that, but I didn't know what it was. And it's a kind of a longer story there about my news reading career, journalism career. But for many years, in the last few years of that career, I was feeling really misaligned. And I think that that's probably no coincidence that as I became more spiritually conscious, that those two things weren't weighing up. So I learned to meditate. I can always track this with my first son, because I learned to meditate when I was pregnant with him. So about 16 years ago. And you know, that then when you meditate regularly, which I do, you start to anything that's inauthentic in your life falls away, or you can no longer ignore that. And that might be relationships or work situations or anything that you're not being true to yourself. So more and more that career wasn't feeling right for me. And it served me well, and I certainly don't regret it. But I was going to work and trying to silence that voice that was becoming louder of, this isn't right for me. I don't want to be doing this anymore. And I think a lot of that is that the news, by its very nature, is negative. We are choosing the most negative things in the world and sharing them with the world. And that's necessary. You could argue it doesn't have to be that negative, but it's a service. We need to know what's going on in the world. But for me, it wasn't feeling right anymore, that I'm sitting up there saying, "Let me tell you all the terrible things going on and coming out of my mouth." And then I'm in my the rest of my life, I'm trying to become, well, not trying to become, I am becoming more of a conscious person. So really, that's the simple way of putting it. So therefore, when I finished it my latest job was Sky News, I've also worked for other organizations. When that came to a close during COVID, I saw that as a gift. I thought, there's some time here. I've been given this gift of time, and what is the next act for me? And so it felt like something to do with the spiritual books. And the short version, but I'd always thought I'd love to be part of a book club where they share spiritual books, because there's so many book clubs for novels and so on, but I couldn't find one for that. And then I realized, I think that's my job to start that. I think I've been called to start that. And then, being the journalist that I am, it wasn't just going to be, let's talk about the books, let's interview the authors as well. And so I did. And so that's where we are.
Amazing. So tell us about membership and the benefits of that.
So what I do is we share one spiritual book a month, and I announce those 4 books at a time so that people have time to prepare and time to read the books. And then I interview, where possible, the author of those books. So, I mean, to get really technical on what happens is that when I announce 4 books at a time, I try to do 3 with an author and then 1 where we just talk about the book, because sometimes people prefer that. And so I invite the authors to come into it's usually via Zoom, and to we can ask them questions directly. And it has been incredible, the authors that have turned up. So my very first spiritual book club session was with Gabby Bernstein. Anybody on this path, or even those who don't, would know her. She's the J-Lo of the spiritual world. She is the OG of our contemporary times. And I put out a request for Gabby Bernstein to come in, and she said yes. And I was told that was because she thought that it was an aligned idea. And then I've had Deepak Chopra came in. He was the 4th author we ever had. And
wow.
Dan Millman, who wrote Wave the Peaceful Warrior, and Rebecca Campbell, and just on and on, with just incredible authors. And I think that's because, to me, that's when the going gets tough, because starting your own business is, as you would know, is not easy. And when the going gets tough, and I think, oh, am I meant to be doing this? I just look at the authors that are coming in, and I realize, yes, I am. I'm getting the signs that I'm meant to be on this path. And so that's what keeps me going. And so, so every month the members can join in live and ask questions of the author, or just listen to me chat to them, and or they get sent a private podcast later to catch up. So that's kind of the gist of what we do.
What was Deepak Chopra like?
He's very funny, actually, but really I was really struck with him by how kind he was. You'd think you'd expect that, but also how simple he makes spiritual practices sound. I remember saying to him in the interview, what's one thing we can all do to be more in alignment? And he just goes, just stop taking it all so seriously. It's just a game, he really believes all of that. And what we do, all of us, is we think too much, put meaning on things. We're all meaning making machines. And he just comes back to that, just enjoy your life, just find the joy. And I think about that often, actually. That little voice comes back to me.
You're so lucky to have his actual voice in your mind when he said that to you. That is so cool.
Well, he said it to the members of the book club, really.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So also for members to be able to, I'm just thinking, when Elizabeth Gilbert came to Sydney, how you'd even get a ticket for that, and you're providing access to that with the members, that's amazing.
I know when we had Gabby Bernstein's been on twice, and she came back recently. She was in Australia, and she did a national tour, and she's talking to audiences of, 3,000 people. And we had her on a little Zoom here in my lounge room after I dropped my son to the school bus. So I'm back here doing a Zoom with Gabby. And the people that turned up live, there was just a handful. Well, it was more than a handful. There was enough that they could talk to her and ask her questions. And she was so generous with her time. She's so huge. And the members got to ask her these questions. And I saw these transformations taking place, these incredible moments of questions they've had for a long time, or pain that they've been carrying, and she was able to help them have a breakthrough. And I thought, we're facilitating this. What a gift that we're making this happen right now. And that's exactly what I wanted. And a little aside on that with Gabby is that it was when I was in one of her Sydney seminars. It was 2019, so it was two visits ago. And it was when I was sitting in that I had this download, because she got everyone to do a group meditation, as she does. So there's 2,000 people meditating, and I had this download of you need to create the spiritual book club. And I could even get authors into the book club, like authors like Gabby. Imagine that, and then the universe lines up. So then I was retrenched from my job, and then I had to finish my next book, and then I had some space, and then I put the request out to Gabby because I heard she had a new book out, and then she was my first guest. So see how that synchronicity plays in, and that's what keeps me going, Jessica.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, you've been one of the people I've wanted on the podcast for a long time, but I waited until I felt that, because it's a new podcast. So now we have 13,500 subscribers. So I'm like, I can approach Jacinta now.
You could have asked me anytime, but I do appreciate that. I get that thing about just knowing when the time's right to ask. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Could you tell us about spiritual books as a genre? Like they're life-changing books, but like how do you define the what makes a spiritual book, and how is that different from like a religious book? Is there a crossover in the genre?
Not much. So I
Yeah.
think that there used to be a bit of misunderstanding with that, didn't there? Where you think people would think spirituality and think religion. I
Yeah.
think now most of us know that they are very separate things. And so I would say the way I often describe it is they're just inspirational books. That's what they
Yeah.
are. Any book that you pick up, I mean, they are nonfiction, but any
Yeah.
book that you pick up in that space that just inspires you to open your mind, shift your perspective, connect with yourself, connect with your higher self, connect with your soul, connect with your purpose, feel more love in your life, change your practices, anything that inspires you or motivates you to elevate yourself and make a better life. And on the understanding that it is up to us to make our lives better, to improve our lives. Any book there, it's in the genre. So I have a few behind me. If you're watching on video, I have stacks and stacks of these kind of books, and they are endless. And it is the fastest growing book genre.
Is it really?
Well,
Yeah.
no surprise there, right?
No
Because we're all
surprise.
seeking much more.
But a book by the Dalai Lama, to me, that could cross, because couldn't you say that sort of Buddhism, it's Buddhist learning, but it is also deeply spiritual. So is that a cross boundary, cross genre?
Yeah, definitely. So the Dalai Lama, I haven't asked him to come in the book club. We haven't had any of his books, but yeah, that's a great example because, so religious masters or mistresses, religious masters, let's just call it that umbrella term, like the Dalai Lama, that they're not necessarily touting their religion. They're touting spiritual concepts. Now, I wouldn't want a book in here that is saying this is the religion you must follow. That's a religious book.
Prescriptive type book.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a book that is maybe written by someone who's aligned with a certain religion, but has wisdom to impart that can inspire or uplift or elevate everyone else's lives, sure, that's exactly on the path. So The Art of Happiness is one of the Dalai Lama's books, isn't it? I can't see my copy here, but I've got it somewhere. So yeah, that's a great example of where that might cross over, but I wouldn't be saying then everybody has to align with that religion. Also, even Buddhism for Mothers, that's another book that I love, and I quoted, yes, by Sarah Napthali. She's Australian. And she wrote Buddhism for Mothers and then Buddhism for Mothers of School Children. There's a series. They really helped me, those books, when my children were small. And in my previous book to the Single Mothers Social Club was called Mother Zen. I interviewed Sarah for that book. So I will get Sarah into the book club at some stage. I tell you, the list of authors I want to have in is so long, and because I only do one a month.
You only do 12 a year, right?
Yeah. So I will get to her. She knows that we've spoken about it. But I was going to say that even that's a good example where it's about Buddhist practices for mothers to feel more present and connected with their children and, letting things wash over them and all of those Buddhist practices. But it's not saying you've got to go and be a Buddhist. But why not take some of the tenets of their religion if they're going to help you and inspire you and give you some tools when you're going through that time in your life?
So what makes a really good spiritual read, and what would be a couple that you could recommend to listeners, viewers?
Yeah, and I want to say you're asking me this on the hop, so I say that so that you know that anything that comes through is just what's meant to come through. There are so many. How on earth can you ask me a question like that? How can I narrow it down?
What's your favorite color?
Well, you can tell. Yeah.
Pink. Okay.
Pink, always. Probably because I have boys. I need some contrast. So, gee, I've really stereotyped there, but that's how it is in our...
Look, I've got 2 girls and I'm wearing black. I don't know.
You're probably surrounded by pink, and I'm stereotyping again. So yeah, I won't do that.
Just kidding.
So you asked me what makes it a spiritual book? Well, I think that it's one where spiritual practices are condensed into terms that we can understand. So obviously, if you're more of a spiritual guru master, you might want something a bit deeper and heavier. But what we're doing here in the book club is I like those books that get these, really deep, esoteric, spiritual concepts and help them and cut through and make them palatable. So there's lots like that. So you asked me, what would I recommend? I mean, where do I start? I think one of the gateway books, Gateway Drugs, to spiritual books would be You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And actually, it's just over there. I can see it. And a lot of people say that's their first book that opened their eyes to the concept of, I mean, we can really summarize the concept of that we have power over our life, that our thoughts determine our future, that our thoughts determine our life. And when I was also like that. When I read that book, You Can Heal Your Life, which was in my 20s, I remember mind blown. I just remember reading it and thinking, really? You mean what I think? Actually, I thought this was just happening. I thought this was just fate. You had no say in this. So a lot of people say that was the book that did that for them. So I've moved on a lot since then, but that was the first one that really opened my eyes. The Alchemist is another OG. So I'm talking about the OG books. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. So that is fiction, actually. That's a fable. It's one of the few examples of, fiction being a spiritual book. And we've talked about that. We did that 1 month in the Spiritual Book Club. And it's that beautiful fable of a shepherd boy who's trying to find his life purpose. So there's lots of lessons in there about how we're all born, Paulo Coelho calls it our personal legend. So we're all born with a personal legend. And then we remember it when we're born, and then we forget. And so our life mission is to go and find that personal legend or that purpose. And then, we come across obstacles along the way, which are our thoughts, and we meet enemies along the way. And we realize they're just our thoughts. So it's really powerful in that way. So that's another great one. And let me just think, what's another one I can mention to you, because there's so many. I think also one of the ones that's touched me most in recent years is the books by Michael Singer. So there's The Surrender Experiment, and there's Living Untethered and The Untethered Soul, Michael A. Singer. Those books have been really helpful for me, actually, in more recent years. And I'll just throw one more in there, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. So I'll just put those in a group to say that, when you're going through big life transitions, when things are seemingly falling apart, because then you realize it has to collapse in order for us to rebuild, those books just are so powerful in helping you to understand that this is all okay. Just sit in it. They're just emotions. They're not going to kill you. In fact, sit with the emotions. There's no difference between negative and so-called positive emotions. Recognizing that your thoughts are just thoughts, and being able to observe yourself and realize that nothing is happening to you. These are just the stories we're telling ourselves and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I could go on, but there's some recommendations.
You bring the journalist rigor to spiritual books, don't you?
I haven't thought about it like that.
Yeah, you like the way that you approach it, and with the interviews and everything, because I love the podcast because it allows me to keep practicing journalism. But I mean, have you ever thought about, writing like a compendium or something, like 100 spiritual books you must read before you die?
No, thank you for that, Jessica. Would you like to publish that? No, I haven't thought about that. It's like, I
People
feel like
could work their way through it, or you could have, for this type of problem that you're facing, here are, bereavement or something like that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I feel like there's probably something out there like that. I thought you were going to ask, a lot of people ask me, have you got a spiritual book in you? And I feel like I do, but it comes out like the Single Mother Social Club is quite spiritual.
It is very spiritual. I would say it is a spiritual book.
So I weave that in. So in fact, my publisher at the time when I wrote this, who's a friend, she was saying to me, oh, just pull back on the spiritual stuff because, you don't want to lose people. And I even at one point put a disclaimer in there, just kind of warning you.
Saying what?
I can't remember now. I'd have to look it up. But
there's spiritual content in this book.
Well, I remember her saying to me, you've mentioned kinesiology way too many times. So just let's pull back on a bit of that. So I think that's changed actually in the couple of years since that book's come out. I think that's actually changed already. But there is still that sense of, we might turn them off. No, I don't think so. I think we're all up for it now.
I think we are.
Changed. Yeah, we're all
something has worked for someone, we are all ears, and that's the reason why we pick up a book, I think. So perhaps you might yourself write a spiritual book, but as yet the idea for it hasn't struck you.
Yeah, I can't imagine myself, never say never, I can't imagine myself writing an actual spiritual book like a Michael Singer. You never know, but I see myself writing more, if I write again, I sort of have something brewing, but we'll see. I'm not one of those people. I'm not an author that goes, next book, next book. I just get on with my life and then go, oh, I feel like called to write this, which is what happened with the Single Mothers Social Club. So I feel like whatever I write will just inevitably have my own spiritual growth, personal growth. So it doesn't have to be called spiritual, right? It's just personal growth. It's just any commitment to learning and growing and becoming more familiar with ourselves. That's spiritual, I think. So I do all that work all the time. I'm constantly doing that work. And so it's going to find its way into anything I write. And so I think it'll come out that way. You know, maybe I'll even write fiction and then I can shove a whole lot of that in.
You absolutely can. Yeah, you could do a fable type style. Could you tell us about the Single Mothers Social Club? How did that book come to be?
Well, I tend to write about what's going on in my life. And so there I was, a single mother, and I realized, and not only do I write about what's going on in my life, but I write about it when I realize, oh, there's a different perspective to this situation out there, and I don't feel that way. And so I need to write about that, and maybe someone else will relate. So I've done that with most of my books. So with this, I noticed when I joined the club, the Single Mother Social Club, I noticed that there was so much stigma around single motherhood. And it surprised me because I was like, what do you mean? We should be revering single mothers. It's like what we're doing is incredible. Single mothers are just warrior women doing the most incredible job, if you call it a job, taking on this role of their lives. And they are just so powerful. And I just had so much admiration for the ones that I knew. And I know I was in it and I know how hard it is. And I was really proud of myself for what I was doing and the decision I'd made, a really big decision to leave the family home with my 2 little boys and get out and give us a chance at a better life. And so I just thought, no one's talking about this upside of single motherhood. And single mothers that I talk to feel so isolated and judged, even today, still feel so judged. And so I just thought, right, I'm going to write a book about single motherhood, but from that perspective of it being a chosen life path, not one that's thrust upon us. And so that's why I did it. And then I interviewed lots of different single mothers and solo mothers. I also learned that's a very different term. I had to learn that. And I interviewed about 40 of them and experts as well, and my own story weaved in. And so I wanted this book to help women to feel seen and validated and that they're a part of something, because it's not the experience they're getting out into the world. And hopefully even just let this book shift the conversation a bit, which I think it's done from what I'm hearing, to just shift that perspective and conversation around who are single mothers, and maybe people will start to see them in a different light. And I need to add, I didn't just write it for single mothers. I wrote it for anybody in their life who has single mothers in their life. Guess what? That's everyone. If you look at the stats, because I wanted them to know how to support the single solo mothers in their lives. And to also, I wrote it for women who might be contemplating it and who are completely daunted by it. That might be someone who's deciding whether to have a child on their own, or someone deciding whether to leave a relationship. And a lot of women say, I wish I could, but it's too daunting. And so this book is also like, you can do it. And in fact, you will, this is where the spirituality comes in, that is a moment of reckoning, because life is not plan A when you're a single mother. Really, it's not for anybody, especially a widow. It's not plan A. And so you are forced to have a moment of reckoning. And from that, you can either be a victim, or you can choose to grow and evolve and become the woman you were always meant to be, and perhaps got lost in there for a while. So this book is meant to be that rallying call to arms. You can do it, and you'll come out the other side better off, and so will your kids, which is not the story we're told, are we, about single mothers? We're told that it's a disaster, and it's not.
Yeah, because of the stigma, like I really took a lot from that part of the book, because I was like, I feel really seen, like in the beginning. And you had the same thoughts that I had, and with such honesty, you share them. Like I remember going to the playground and dreading if the other mums would ask me about my husband that they assumed I had, and then they would know I was a single mum. And then when that happened, I would be like feeling like that on the inside. And now I actually forget that I'm a single mum. And so when someone says, oh, your partner. I'm like, oh, partner. Oh, yeah. You know, I could have had a partner, but I'm so comfortable in my own skin now. But there's also a line where you're with a group of friends and they, in a passing comment, they say like, oh, you know, that suburb isn't as good. It's full of single mothers. And it was your own friend who then you're like, they're talking about me. Like just those little comments. Like I had a friend once say to me, you know, I don't know why she's selling you moisturizer. Like you're a single mum. And I was like, I can still buy moisturizer. Do you know what I mean? Like the heart's sort of in the right place, but it's really patronizing. So I really liked it because I've never come across another book. I don't know if there is one that's for single mums written by a single mum, non-fiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I wrote it, because I saw
Yeah.
that gap there. And
There's a gap in the market. Yeah.
yeah, and my publisher, who isn't the single mum, but she said to me, would you write about that? Because it just needs to be told. So she gave me that kick to do it. But also, I was going to say, that wasn't a friend who said that to me. It was
Oh,
a
wasn't it?
woman on the sidelines of soccer.
Okay.
And I didn't know her very well, but kind of through other people. And I just remember, I think at the time I was just about to leave their dad and my children's dad, and I knew that, but I can't remember. But she didn't know me very, very well. She just met me, but she was saying just like with absolute disdain, oh, this suburb is becoming so full of single mothers. And I didn't feel shame. I remember thinking shock, like, is this how people view single mothers? Wow. Whereas I'm thinking, I'm a legend. I'm
Yeah.
going to do this for my boys.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it wasn't the case. I wish I always say, do the maths. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but do the maths. We'd rather be in a nuclear family with 2 adults, because it's easier to raise a child with 2 adults, but only if those adults are functional.
Yeah.
And only if they are respectful to each other and preferably even love each other and like each other. Wouldn't that be great? But to bring up kids in anything other than that is, you got to question that. And unfortunately, I didn't have that right mix to stay. I really had no choice but to go. Some people would stay in that environment, but that I wasn't going to let my kids have that as their role modeling. And so I was thinking that I was just so empowered by doing this. And then I've got somebody reflecting this back as a really disempowered life choice, or not even a life choice, but this kind of like shameful situation you might
Failure.
find yourself in. Like how embarrassment. and I didn't feel the shame. I felt the shock, and also the what the can't you see what's going on here? And so that's I hung on to that story, and then it was another reason I wrote the book, to counteract those narratives that were going on.
Was it cathartic to write about the grief that you experienced, you know, the family breakdown? And did it also take some courage to really step out publicly and say, you know, I'm owning single mum, like this is my book title, this is my author brand?
Yeah, so the second part, no, that didn't take courage, because I didn't see anything wrong with that. There was nothing negative in that for me. People would say that to me, though, say, oh, that's so brave. And I again thought, this is part of the problem, that we think that there's something brave about saying that you're a single mother. In fact, like I was mentioning, I think that it's actually somebody that we should be respecting and have great reverence for, because we know there's a backstory there. There's always going to be a backstory. The first part of your question was it cathartic? Yes, it was. But I'm sure you can imagine, as a publisher, there's a lot that I didn't include for many reasons.
Yeah.
Some of them are legal, but also just I don't want my kids to ever really know the extent of what went down. So I did get a lot of it down on paper, that was cathartic, because, you know, with writing, you get it down and then you pare it back. So, and then I pared it back again and pared it back again. And I kept, you know, in my edits, I would reread it through the lens of my boys, because everything I do is through that lens. Since you have children, isn't that the case? As soon as you have your children, suddenly that's the perspective in which you see everything. And I just kept thinking, okay, when they're adults and they read this, I didn't want them to feel any, they shouldn't feel any shame. It's nothing to do with them, but I didn't want them to have that story. So yeah, it's a very, very pared back, watered down version of what actually went on. I wish I could tell the real story, because I think it would really help other women and inspire other women to feel seen. And I think it would also show people what goes on, because you hear all these You know, you hear politicians, and I'm just choosing my words carefully here, but politicians, organizations talking about coercive control, for example, and you think, if only you knew.
Yeah.
Financial abuse. And yeah, there's unfortunately women are still silenced on that stuff.
I wonder whether fiction could be a good device.
Yeah, thinking about that.
Yeah. And I wonder if that is what you are thinking of your next project.
Can't say.
Well, I guess I still have some work to do myself. I have not referred to myself as a single mother. I call myself a single parent, because single mother is loaded. Do you know what I mean? Like,
so what's the difference?
I just call myself a single parent.
How's that different?
Well, I don't know, but it's a conscious choice that I've made, and you might think that's not very courageous of me, but
No, I'm curious because I can't see the difference.
It's gender neutral.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's connotations with a single mother, and I'm just more comfortable saying single parent, and I always have. What gets me is when I go to a pharmacy and they ask me if I'm on Centrelink because I'm a single mother, straight away. Like, if you go to the doctor or whatever, and like Medicare card or whatever, the next question that comes out of their mouth is, are you on Centrelink? Like, do you have what is it, a card, the healthcare card? Have you got a healthcare card? And so it just annoys me. And so I don't know if it's kind of like not to not give that term. I don't know, but maybe that's wrong of me. It's just my own.
No, wrong. I've learned something there because I didn't think about the difference, but I guess I can see what you're saying, and you're right, it's gendered.
Yeah, because a single father, you don't suddenly immediately assume that they need food bank support.
That's right. But then the flip side to that is I was thinking it's also considerate of them to ask in case the single parent hasn't thought to get their card out. But this is why I love hearing people's perspectives, because I'm sure the pharmacist means that as a helpful thing, and yet on the receiving end, you think that's such a judgment.
Yeah, it is such a judgment. It's such a judgment. And it's funny because my brother-in-law is a barrister, and he went to the pharmacist last year or something, and he had just mown the lawn, and I think he had his flip-flops on. He hadn't shaved and stuff, and they asked if he had a healthcare card. So there's, we are all judging each other, aren't we? In the second in which we, present ourselves. How did publishing your book help you to step into the role of women's advocate?
Oh, am I in the role of women's advocate?
I think you are. I think you officially would be.
Officially, it's been declared. Yeah,
I mean, you spoke recently, didn't you? Weren't you on a panel that I saw on your Instagram page?
Possibly. I do lots of different things. I think what you might have seen is I MC a lot, and I MC'd an event for a domestic violence campaign.
Yeah.
So that might be what that was. And so I was hosting that. Yeah, I think that I wouldn't have called myself an advocate, but I think that happens inadvertently when you step up, put your head up, and write about something. Well, in my case, this book was about single motherhood, but I've had a column, over the years, I've had columns as well, and I'll write about things. And so then people want you to talk about that. So I guess in that sense, I am. I think that with social media, we can all be advocates for anything. And so if I can, through any of my writing, any of the avenues, if I can, it sounds so righteous, but what I'm about to say, but I'll just say it and see how it comes out. But if I can help another single mother, solo mother, single parent, there you go, let's use that term. If I can help them feel less alone or validated for the role that they've either chosen or found themselves in, or to get them to see that this is not the end. In fact, it's a wonderful beginning, that they get to choose the narrative. They get to write the story of their life, that this is just the beginning of a whole new chapter. Any of those things, if I can help reduce the stigma in any way, then if that's being called an advocate, then yeah, I'm happy to do that. But I don't step out there and say, this is what I want to do. I want to change the world. I just wanted to write something that I felt needed to be said. And really also, you write the books you want to read, right? So I was like, there's nothing out there for single mothers that's not full of stigma, or that's not like a guidebook or something. I wanted it to to be a
like navigating your divorce by a lawyer type
yeah,
of thing.
that's right.
Yeah.
12 steps.
Yeah, to freedom. Did you get a lot of emails from single mothers after the book was published?
Yeah, I mean, mainly DMs on socials, right? I still get them. And
Sure, yeah.
yeah, a lot of people. And, you know, you say when you write a book, oh, if I just get one, if one person changes their lives, I actually say, no, I need more than that because I need to make a living as well. So, no, it has to be more than one. And I have had many, many, many still coming in from people who've picked up the book and just they'll often say, you know, for the first time in my life, or for the first time since I became a mother 7 years ago, a single mother, sorry, I feel proud of myself, or I feel seen, or I feel that I'm being respected for my choice. That's worth it, isn't it? Because writing a book, as you know, is hard work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of solo time. It's a grind. And every time I do one, it's probably why I have so many years in between. Every time I do one, I think, that's it. I'm never doing another book. And then when you get feedback like that, oh, it's a cliche, isn't it? But it's worth it.
No, it's the best part of becoming an author, I think, to find your people and for your people to find you. But to be the figurehead for single mothers in Australia, that's a large following. And
maybe not the figurehead. What was that?
And also spiritual books. These are large audiences. So you must get a lot of DMs.
So I would just say not the figurehead, a figurehead. And also it's since I've written that book and there was a big flurry of publicity and lots of comments and so on, I've kind of then moved into the next phase. So while I am still raising my boys as a solo, you know, as a single parent, co-parenting technically, I'm kind of not so much in that space anymore. I've taken on the spiritual book club and I'm in that space, but still getting these trickles of emails. And I still love that. The thing about a book is it's permanent. It's out in the world. And the only thing is I didn't do an audiobook version. And it was simply because at the time, I mean, as a publisher, I'm sure you like this kind of industry talk. But at the time this book was coming out, my publisher happened to be changing jobs. So the ball got dropped. So I didn't do an audiobook, and I get requests for that all the time. So I just wish I'd done that, and I maybe will. But at the moment, it's a very expensive exercise, which I'd have to fund myself. And so just need the AI to catch up, and then I'll be able to put one of those out into the world.
Yeah, and the AI is so on the cusp of catching up for that. Amazon contacted me for my second book and said, would you like to be part of a beta trial? Choose the accent and we'll make an audiobook of your book. And I said, yes, please. That sounds great. So if they can roll that out for all books on Amazon, fantastic.
Yeah.
It is very costly to narrate your own is still, you've got to hire the studio and everything like that. So, okay. If there was one piece of advice you might give to a single mum listening, what would that be?
Just one. It would be an all-encompassing one is to write your own story. So this is a new chapter and metaphors flying around here, but you get to write it. It's a blank canvas. I mean, of course, there's always stuff going on, and often there are huge complications. We know that, especially if you've left a situation of domestic abuse or coercive control or both. And so there are kind of threads of complications, but on the whole, there's so many upsides to being a single parent, which I write about in the book. I've got a whole chapter called The Upside. And you get to, you know, have this relationship with your children that you wouldn't have otherwise had. And you get the space to remember who you are, the woman you were before all of this. So, I mean, literally journal, write the story, write how you want your life to look, and you get to decide, because you don't have another adult. You might meet someone else, but you don't have another adult that is you have to run it past. You know, you get to write the story. So that's what I would say. Choose the story well and write it and live it.
That's beautiful advice. Final question for you is, what are you hoping to achieve in the next 12 months? Is there anything in particular that you're keen to achieve?
So many things. And to pick one, I would say I'm working on my first podcast, which I've been putting off for years. I should have done it years ago, that old thing, but it's happening. I've recorded some interviews and we'll be going live with that. So that will be happening by the end of the year. And that is called, I'm really proud of it. Actually, I love it. It's an idea I've had for a long time. It's called My Spiritual Side. and I'm interviewing well-known people about their spiritual side, because most of them have one these days. It's almost like if you look at anybody who's really successful and aligned, depends how you view success. But when you talk to them, they've usually got what I'm calling a spiritual side. So they've got a spiritual practice, they have beliefs, they do affirmations, they journal, they meditate. There's always something going on. So I'm nutting down into that and finding out what it is that drives them. And I'm so fascinated by that. It's always the first thing I ask people. So I feel really excited and passionate about that.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. And that's a very clever title too. That's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Hembury Books podcast, Jacinta. It was really excellent to talk to you.
I just loved it, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.